Welcome back to On the Entrepreneur's Journey, the podcast where founders share their real stories behind building companies that grow, scale, and create lasting value. I'm your host, Peter Santry, a former Wall Street exec who now helps founders build businesses that grow, scale, and become less dependent on the founder. Today, I'm joined by Richard Allred, president of Alpine Technical Services. Richard's company began as an industrial water treatment business founded by his father nearly 50 years ago. Since then, he's transformed it by solving adjacent customer problems from industrial safety showers to climate control systems, all while navigating everything from a frightening personal accident to a devastating fraud inside the company. Today, we'll explore how entrepreneurs recognize opportunity, grow without losing focus, recover from adversity, and prepare their organizations to seize the opportunities in front of them. So, Richard, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Peter. It's good to be with you.
Good, good. So, your father founded ATS nearly 5 decades ago. But what drew you into the business, and when did you realize you wanted to carry on or build on his what he had started rather than pursuing a completely different path?
Yeah, so that's probably interesting. Part of it probably stems from as a young kid, I would go with him to some of the rural areas of Utah and go visit plants. And from early on, it was kind of like being in a how it's made video, where I got to see how all kinds of cool things were made. His customers were food processors to mining to fiberglass manufacturers to insulation to semiconductor. So you kind of got to see how everything was built. And 5 decades ago, an 8-year-old could go with his dad in some of these places still,
Right.
especially in rural areas. And so I think that was probably the first intrigue. The second, I actually really enjoyed working with my father. And so there was the fun of being with him and seeing a side of him that was a little more aggressive and assertive than I would see at home. So that was kind of fun to see that.
Right. So, was there any lessons that your father taught you about running a business that still influences you today?
You know, yeah, there are lots of things, and one of them I remember him saying frequently, you need to charge enough that you can make sure you do the job right. And he commented lots of times people would get in trouble in business if they didn't charge enough to actually do the job right. And then, of course, it ruined their reputation or they would lose money trying to make it right. Um, the other thing, and as I watched people interact with him, I could see that all these plant managers really trusted whatever he would recommend. They would go with it, and and I could see that. And over the years, I've seen that play out for decades.
hmm Yeah, that's all sound advice, actually. Um, so I guess it was 2014 or 2012. You decided to buy the company with your wife. And what changed for you the moment you realized that the future of the company and everyone depending on it was now your responsibility?
Yeah, so it was 2012. My wife and I decided to buy it, and you know, I'd have to say, you pick up the burden of payroll that comes every couple of weeks, whether you like it or not. And so that is, one major burden that you feel. But one thing that my father did that was maybe unique is he was very hands off. And so the couple of years prior to me purchasing the company, he kind of had me running the show. As far as interacting with banks and attorneys and all that. So he would always say, talking about working with other individuals too, like always give them a little bit so they're in a little bit over their head, so that kind of stretches them to learn. And he was very good at doing that with me, and And so as far as running the company, it wasn't as big of an issue or change, but the payroll burden definitely was something that your mind's on constantly, and the cash flow, uh, because you got to make sure people get paid.
Yeah, yeah. Puts a little focus under you.
That cash is king is a bigger concept than they lead on in college.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we'll get to that in a little bit. So when we spoke before, I think the one thing that really standed out was the story you told, which really changed the company. When you were visiting the site and you were sprayed with hydrochloric acid while inspecting the project. How did that kind of change the company and sort of set you on a different path? Because I think it really was a defining moment both for you personally and for the company.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And we had two things that happened. So one, I was selling hydrochloric acid and concerned with a customer and their ability to deal with that. And then the second was visiting a site, and I actually was sprayed with sulfuric acid, uh,
Oh,
which is different, but in both cases happened about the same time. And I realized that our customer, which is a large customer, uh, didn't have the showers that were needed, for me to protect myself. Not that they didn't have them available, but the water was too cold, and you can't stay in cold water for 15 minutes that you need to rinse chemicals off. And so, right then it became important, and I knew enough about the location and that I could get myself after the initial rinsing and shedding some of my safety gear and doing that initial rinse, that I could get to a place to rinse off. But after that, it became real evident, hey, we've got to come up with a solution that's going to help people, because they really can get hurt permanently if they don't have the tepid water that's needed. And anybody that's tried to stay in a cold shower, uh, and water coming out of your pipes at your home, if it's not heated, it's too cold for you to stay in. I would say in most situations. So that became really important to us, and we started pushing our company towards providing the safety equipment, safety shower and eye washes to customers that we had been selling chemistry to make sure that they were taken care of, and that when we would do deliveries, they would have safety equipment available.
so at that moment, you were strictly the business that you bought was a sort of a water treatment and business, and then you saw this and said, well, this is a real problem. Um, So, what I loved about it was that you went and you sort of said, next lane over is a customer need, and you just jumped in and said, I'm going to solve it, which was, not necessarily really related to your core business at all.
Yeah, it wasn't related, but adjacent, and fit really well, because we'd be selling to the same customers and same type of customers. Where sometimes I see companies jumping into new markets completely, and then you have a different customer base. That's a bigger stretch. In this case, we would be selling to the same types of industries that we've been selling our water treatment services.
Right. So, and how somehow you were comfortable that just with the customer sort of similarity, but also, were you ever worried that it was going to distract you from your existing core business, or was this something that you felt there was enough know-how in the company that it would just be adjacent and not be that distracting?
Yeah, yeah, there was enough know-how in the company. A lot of besides selling chemicals for water treatment, we did a lot of equipment and so we designed lots of water systems and assembled them, and that, so that it wasn't a real, something that led to any fear or question. Like, this is something we can do. We're, in a lot of cases, repurposing some of our vendors to provide the parts and that we need in a new scenario, but it was in a lot of cases the same vendors that we were using.
Okay. It wasn't just the customer base, it was just a lot of things that were adjacent to what you were used to doing, and it really fit in nicely. And then it's what I love too is that, this opportunity came up again, and this was your next product, which was the climate control trailers. And you were you were sitting there and you saw a need again. Talk to us about, that evolution, why how you came up with that, and how it was really a productivity enhancing, formula rather than just another piece of equipment for your customers.
Yeah, and so this uh, we started looking at these several years back, and this is like again, something similar to what we've been doing, and it's the same customer base, and as we looked at that, it's like, no, we can use the same vendors in many cases, uh, similar type product. But it's also in that safe space. And as a company, we had said, what our tagline is uh, enhancing life through safe products. And, we, look at that and say, this is another thing that we can do to help people be safe on the job site. And in this case, our safety showers are used only in emergencies. And we may have a safety shower that's out on a site for a year or 2 years. And if everything goes well, it's never used. And that's wonderful because nobody got hurt. It's there. Our eco rigs and our safety rig showers, our glaciers, they're very reliable. If they need them, they're going to work. In this case, it was a product that's like, this is something that can enhance or improve people's lives, uh, daily. And so as we delved into that, we're like, what's the reason for it? Well, in a lot of scenarios, you have people working outside where it's very hot, very humid, and their performance slips. As their bodies get worn down, and if you've ever gone from an office job and gone and helped out in the field, it beats on your body, whether it's cold or hot. And so initially we came out with trailers that were just cooling, and we started seeing some traction in the market where states and OSHA were like, hey, let's pass some laws to make this mandatory so that we keep people safe. Hydration is a big issue. Keeping employees hydrated, keeping them from heat stroke, heat exhaustion. And then as we dug into it a little bit more, we found out that the bigger companies were looking at it and saying, what's the time on tool? How long can we keep somebody effective on tool? Well, if they let them cool down, they get more time on tool. They have less rework that they have to do, so the employees actually perform better. And so there's really a savings aspect to this safety, which was exciting for us because safety showers, there's not a savings other than lawsuits and legal bills. But this is something that actually can say that there is a return on investment for the employer. It provides something that's beneficial to the employee as well. And we looked at that as this is a market that can really move and really help a lot of people. After being out in the field and meeting with customers, which is an important part of business, and getting feedback, and that we have since added heating element as well. And where our initial thought was these will be used in hot climates, now we're seeing the same demand for these in Canada, Alaska, the northern states, where people need to get out of the cold too. And those that work in cold climates, North Dakota, um, it's hard on your body to stay out in the cold. so
Yeah.
so having a place you can come in and shelter for a little bit. And so we've designed a trailer, and our initial one was a cool rig because it would cool. And then we have since adapted the name to climate rig because it handles cold or hot. temperatures and does it very well. We got feedback just this week from data center sites that like this is resetting the bar in the industry. The product that we put out, we're proud of. It is so much better than our competitors that once people purchase them, that's all they want. So that's kind of fun to have a product like that. But we put a lot of, you know, I would say what is unique, maybe a little bit in all our products. We're taking our knowledge of what's been going on in our core business and saying how do we incorporate it into these other products. And so, with our core water treatment business, cooling towers, chillers, boilers, so this delta change in delta, the evaporation rates, dew points, all those things that are real important, we can take that and say, okay, let's put that in a box. Now we're doing it different than we would an industrial cooling tower. But, from what we've studied and been involved in over the years, we can incorporate that into a product.
Yeah, it's amazing that, the know-how, the variables are the same, how quickly do things cool down, and, you can use that for your own safety equipment. So now you're very levered to customers, and you're a much bigger wallet share, because you're selling them multiple products across what they do. Talk to me a little bit about the markets, because we had the infrastructure spending that came with COVID, which I'm sure drove a lot of outdoor roads, sort of civil engineering projects and things like that. And now we have the data center boom, that's starting up, or is AI driven. Tell me what the fundamentals look like for the overall uses of your product, because data centers need to be cooled. People have to build them. I would think that the markets that you're in, maybe serendipitously in the last 7 or 8 years, have been just really a big tailwind for you.
Yeah, so one of we do try to pick markets that are regulated or controlled, and so people have a reason, not just because it makes sense to do, but also that there is some regulation that says you're going to comply. Um,
Hmm.
Data centers are a big play for us. We sell our equipment to the large rental companies, and a rental company one told me this morning they're on 240 different data center sites. you know
Wow.
so yeah, there's a big market. There's probably more going on than most people are aware of on data centers. We tend to use our phones and computers and think everything's stored in there, but data centers are, I guess, a necessary evil. They're important to our economy and how things operate. But with that comes a lot of infrastructure, additional power plants, water treatment plants, all the supporting that goes on, and all kinds of construction. These we've heard of a lot of our climate trailers going on rent for 8-year rents, which is an awesome rental if you're in the rental space. And so we're happy to be able to support our rental partners in getting these. But we see that as growing, and we see for the next decade it's going to be real high growth and lots of engagement in that. And the power industry is going to be the same. We keep consuming more and more energy as our economy develops, and we're dependent on our phones and computers and all the data that's making our lives wonderful. It just takes a lot of energy to drive that.
Yeah, very interesting. So let's tack away, because it's obviously a great current story, but like all entrepreneurial journeys, it wasn't always it's that easy. And you were very candid about the fraud that impacted the business, and where basically somebody stole from your business. So tell me, looking back at it, what changed most in you as a leader after that experience of getting, an employee really stealing from you?
You know, that's probably a great question, and things are probably still changing. But the immediate thing, I'm not a micromanager, but one of the big steps we took as a company was to make everything very transparent to all employees. And so we actually, uh, Kara came in, and her and Stephen put together an ERP system, kind of bolted one together on Salesforce that lets our sales team see what their sales are doing, purchasing, everything's in one source, and everybody can see what's happening. So that transparency thing was something that was big for us, and I think that was a initial big change. Of course, immediately, when it was discovered, we had a decision, and one of the decisions was we felt like we needed to report it and have it criminally prosecuted, so that other companies wouldn't have the same thing happen to them. And so uh, I know I had lots of people say don't do that, but we felt that that was important to make the community at large aware. And then from there we had to immediately start triaging. They had there'd been lots of vendors not paid for a year. That emails and communication and all that kind of stuff had been diverted. But because of that, we had to get with our vendors that we had worked with for decades and say, here's the plan, here's how you're going to get paid. And this is the way that everybody survives. And then, as an executive team, we would look at it and say, these are the companies that will go under if they're not made a priority. Some of our bigger customers or ones that we knew could survive, we had them wait a little longer to start getting payments so that the smaller companies would survive. And so we kind of had to look at that and say, how do we keep the community that we're involved in alive in the process? And so, that is something that takes years to do. It's not something you do overnight. And then, from that, as an executive team, we sat down and said, how do we generate money today? What's the quickest? At the time, many of our customers, they're big industrial plants, municipal companies, power companies. They move slow. A lot of times make decisions slow. And so, how do we generate cash today? And that's where we started saying, well, let's get into the rental space and focus a bit more on that. And for the first, I would say probably 9 months, we triaged what we were going to buy that would generate the next dollars 3 times a day. And we would go through, this is what's coming in. This is how we can spread it, and as you start to improve, you can break that out. But, standard things people do, 13-week forecast, what pennies are coming in, what pennies are going out, what things can be held off a little bit. And in that you have a firestorm. We had several lawsuits we had to deal with. Some that we knew would happen, some that we didn't. That we were surprised because of things that were being done as part of the fraud. But you stay focused. This is what we've got to do to stay alive. And there was lots of people I had to sit down with personally and say, this is how it's going to play out so that you get paid and everybody else gets paid. Or, we can pull the plug and none of you get paid. Yeah. And I would say I think the thing that really surprised me, about 85% of all the people we dealt with were very reasonable. My guess is a lot of them had gone through something, maybe not as extreme, but something similar, and were very reasonable and easy to work with. Yeah. probably 10% of people were jerks. And, and then there's probably 5% of people that would try to take advantage of the situation. They would send us bogus invoices for things they claimed they'd done, during that period of time, that type of thing, where they're just trying to take advantage of things. And so, we just said, we're not going to be driven on emotion. If you think you really provided services, provide us documentation, POs, delivery tickets, that kind of thing. And we're able to work through things. So it's taken some time, and but we have a good executive team. We fight a bunch, but we get along, and I feel like they team up on me a lot, but I'm the optimist in the group and the entrepreneur, and I hire lots of people and have lots of people around me that are real big into details and risk management and that, and so we have good heated discussions. But I think it's served us well as we kind of dealt with the reality of here's where we're at and here's where we're going, and you get there with time. It's not an overnight, but you get there, and we're having a lot of fun now, figuring out where to go and how much more space we need to produce what we're currently providing for people. So
Well, that's great to get that in the rearview mirror. And I love, obviously the process of litigating, sorting it out, getting your vendors paid, putting people on schedules, surviving yourself. I mean, let's face it, you're one of the the people that, was going to survive too. So, and I love the way you said, well, now how can we get cash? And then that really birthed the rental business, which making the equipment available to on a much cheaper basis and a pay as you go, accelerated sales and got money in the door, and that probably allowed you to satisfy your vendors much more quickly. And I think that was a great adaptation out of need. And
yeah,
that's become a huge part of your business today. It's incredible.
yeah. One of the things that surprised me as an entrepreneur, the banking relationships we had, how willing they were to, they were patient and worked with us and understood, what we were doing and kind of the plan, and so there were lots of discussions with them and regular updates to let them know that, but they were very patient and workable. Um, you know, you always hate to pay interest, and and that with some of your loan terms, but the people dealt with, we felt like treated us fair and were very reasonable to work with as we dug out of that. So
Yeah. Sometimes, going through something like that, people see how you act under pressure and the decisions you make. And obviously, it sounds like you treated everybody fairly. And, sometimes the relationships come out stronger. Of course, you're going to lose 10 to 15% who are people are, going to drop away or try to take advantage of you. But, sometimes you come out of it stronger with better relationships because they've seen how you've handled the situation and what your true values are. So I think
well,
that happened in your case.
and I think that was a lesson I learned from watching my dad do business, because even if you're trying something, it doesn't work, as long as you stick around and solve it, your relationships with your customers do become real strong. And you got to remember this, what you're helping them with is their livelihood too. And so if you're going to stick around and make sure that they look good at work and they get their job done, then, at the end of the day, you're going to have a lifelong customer. And, that's, we still have customers that, my dad hasn't been involved since 2012 at all. Other than, I talk to him and pick his brain occasionally, but he doesn't come into the office or that. And we still have people that stay with us and they ask about him every time we have somebody go in to deliver or that. So, but he had helped some of their kids get jobs at different places, or that type of thing. And so there's just real bonds that are created when you solve problems together and really help people.
Yeah, totally, totally. So, getting back to the market opportunity, you and I discussed, you said you have a tremendous amount of growth and you cited the sources, power industry, data centers, the safety part of all the construction that goes on is it's just a very sort of big tailwinds behind that are creating a market opportunity. So tell us about how you're going to capture that and what has to change inside of ATS for the company to be ready to grow and seize the growth opportunity that you have.
Yeah, so a big part for us is automating a lot of financial reporting. We're automating lots of internal emails, spec build outs, those types of things. So we're using a lot of AI. We've got a lot of AI being programmed to help us, bots. I am not a programmer, but they make things work wonderfully on my computer. So we are definitely using a lot of AI in what we do. Now we have lots of customers that won't let us use AI on anything, or vendors that they are involved in. They need to, be sovereign. This is our information they want to protect, which I think is uh, should be a real concern for everybody, because uh, your secret sauce can get out there really easy. so um, so we can't use it for everything, but everything that we can, we are automating and doing that and integrating so it's transparent, all everybody can see. Um, Other things we're doing right now is kind of expanding our manufacturing capability and doing more in-house where we can kind of control those components that we feel like are most important to our company. It's easy for manufacturing partners to take your ideas and then feel like they're their ideas if you let them uh, do too much. And and contracts are wonderful, but they're only as good as the person you sign them with. And
Right.
and so we have to be careful with that. But right now we're looking for where we should expand to, what additional people and changing. You know, as you grow as a company, some of the players you have need to change. Um, and some of it's mindset, some of it's capability, and some of it's just, some people have a lifestyle they want to lead, and it's not the lifestyle that fits with where you're going and
Mhm.
how fast things are moving, and that's okay. I know a lot of times it's great for everybody to think, this is a billion trillion dollar whatever project I'm working on. But for a lot of people, it's they want to have a good home life and not be stressed out, and that's an okay strategy too. And for entrepreneurs too. In our case, we do want to grow. We're having a lot of fun with our distributors and companies that we sell to. Learning and working with them, and so we're excited to do that. And it's just positioning ourselves so that we can um, grow at the rate they want. And a lot of times that means we got to slow down and focus. And we have one big water project we're working on now, and we'll start in one state on the East Coast, just so we make sure we can keep up with our customer, um, so that they don't overwhelm us, and you lose the opportunity by that too. So a lot of things have to be slowed down a little bit more than you want, just to make sure you get them right.
Yeah, it's funny how, especially in growing companies, the best move sometimes is just to build the floor underneath the volume that you've created and make sure that you can satisfy it and then take the leg up from there. So it's consolidating your growth and making sure that you can handle it rather than, as the famous word is, more companies dive into indigestion than starvation, and
Yeah.
really being able to build a floor like that. Well, it sounds like a great and last question really is there any is there any market that you're looking at? You've sort of expanded concentrically out from your core business. Is there any new market that you're seeing as something that you can come in and solve for your customer that's staring you in the face and it's obvious to nobody except for you?
You know, I wish I was that smart. I do think we have some pretty cool opportunities in water and
Hmm.
data centers to help our current distributors and partners. And part of it's just because of my time working in water treatment before and working with my father, who's a very creative chemist. You know, I think we can simplify the process of what's being done at data centers, provide them what they actually need, and simplify the process. So that's something we're uh, excited about and interested in doing right now. And so we're kind of building that out, and I think we'll see some good things from it as we
Right.
take something that's complex and make it simple. And that usually turns out to be a pretty good formula for generating money.
Hmm. And this is really cooling the actual centers themselves using water as the coolant.
So, well, yeah, typically they'll use fluids, but we'll use water to clean those uh, chilling lines.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but I think we've got a process that's going to help, and the capability to do that. And, we do that with relationships, both on our vendor side and on our customer side so that we can better serve the needs. And so for us as a small company, it lets us help lots of people using these partners,
Great, great,
working with them.
great. Well, I can't imagine anyone who's positioned better in what we're seeing, all the macro trends than you are, and safety on top of that. You've really picked a lot of really good markets to go in, and so I think we'll leave it there, Richard. And I'm very excited about your company. I can't wait to watch to see the growth and your ability to keep up with it. And a lot of good lessons from our discussion today. So thank you for that, and for everybody on the entrepreneur's journey in the audience. We look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Thanks very much, Richard.
All right. Hey, thanks, Peter. It's great to be with you today.